Hello everyone, welcome to our presentation. Today, with the students of Chemistry Department, Sacred Heart College, Tevara, is going to present the topic radioactivity and its salient features, which is a part of our complementary physics topic. So, first of all, let me thank our professor, Dr. Pius Agustin, for guiding and for giving such a wonderful platform to mold and to present our skills. So, now let me introduce you my group members and the contents which we are going to discuss with you. So myself Josmi Biju and I will be dealing with the portions radioactivity, its history and units. Then Gobiga will give you an idea about the types of radioactive decay and Anjali will give you an idea about the radioactivity experiment and the radiations in electric and magnetic field. And then Akhila will handle the section sources of radioactivity and earth. And finally, Shruti will talks about the properties and applications of radioactivity. So before moving to the topic radioactivity, we should know about actually what is meant by this nuclear stability. We know in the case of an atom, of course, nucleus is central part, which consists of protons and neutrons, which we togetherly call nucleons. Right. Also, we know that the size of this nucleus is very small when compared to the entire size of an atom, and it is about 10 raised to minus 15 meter in size. Okay, so the stability of this nucleus mainly depends on the number of neutrons and the number of protons. So let's look how it depends on the value of n and z. Since the size of the nucleus is very small, the protons inside the nucleus will experience a repulsive force between them because they are positively charged particles and we know that the light charges repel each other. Right. So closer the protons means of course larger will be the repulsive force. Then the attractive force provided by the neutrons will try to balance the repulsive force between the protons and thus the nucleus will become stable. So, the role of keeping these protons together is generally carried out by neutrons, and you can see how the neutrons surround the protons in such process in the given PPT. But this is not the case when there is a large difference between the number of protons and number of neutrons. In such cases, the attractive force wouldn't be able to balance the repulsive force and hence the nucleus will become unstable. So let's look at some examples. First, two isotopes of sodium, sodium 23 and sodium 24 is given. In sodium 23, we know it consists of 11 protons and 12 neutrons. So there is not much difference between the number of protons and the number of neutrons. Therefore, it is a stable nuclei. But in the case of sodium 24, there is a large difference between the number of protons and number of neutrons. Therefore, it is not at all a stable nuclei. So let's look at another example. So here three isotopes of carbon, carbon 12, carbon 13, carbon 14 is given. So in the first two cases, there is not much difference between the number of protons and the number of neutrons. Therefore, they are stable nucleus. Whereas in the case of carbon 40, there is large difference between the number of protons and the number of neutrons. Therefore, it is not at all a stable nucleus. So we know tritium, an isotope of hydrogen, is also radioactive because there is large difference between the number of protons and the number of neutrons, that is 1h3. Okay, so such isotopes which have an unstable nucleus are generally what we call radioactive isotopes. Okay, so now let's see what is this radioactivity means. So we studied about the stability of nucleus and how it becomes unstable. So if the nucleus is unstable, it will try to become stable, right? In the case of atoms, generally they became stable by forming covalent bonds and so on. But for nucleus, this is not at all possible, right? So they will try to become stable by emitting something which we call radioactive emission or radioactive disintegration or nuclear disintegration and so on. So this is a spontaneous process because it is not at all affected by chemical or physical changes, and this is also a nuclear phenomena because we know all this happens inside a nucleus, right? So here some examples of radioactive disintegration is also given. First one is C14 disintegrates to form N14. We already discussed that C14 is a radioactive isotope, which means contains an unstable nucleus. So definitely it will try to become stable nucleus. So another example is polonium 211. It disintegrates to form the stable nucleus polonium 207. So here we can see the parent nucleus. So the atom which undergoing the radioactive decay are generally be called parent nucleus, and the nucleus remaining after such decay is called daughter nucleus. Okay, so now comes the topic radioactive elements. So in our periodic table, there are almost 38 radioactive elements, and you can see the light yellow color elements in the PPT. So they are the radioactive elements. So all these elements have an atomic number greater than that of lead, that is 82. So elements having no stable form are generally what we call radioactive elements. In the case of carbon, we saw that it contains both stable and unstable nucleus. So it can't take as an radioactive element. So elements having no stable form are always radioactive. Now let's see the discovery of radioactivity. And Henry Becquerel is the father of radioactivity, and he discovered this phenomenon in 1896. And it's the Marie Curie couple who coined the term radioactivity for the first time. Okay, so how it was discovered? Actually, the discovery of radioactivity was quite accidental, and also it is really connected with the discovery of X-rays by William Röntgen. His picture, the experiment he did, and the result he got is also attached in the PPT. So Röntgen discovered X-rays that was capable of penetrating through black paper, body, soft tissues, and so on. So our Becquerel was very much interested in the Röntgen's discovery, and he began looking for a connection between the fluorescence property he had already been investigating and the newly discovered X-rays. Okay, so he thought that the fluorescent uranium source he had been studying might absorb sunlight and re emit it as X rays. So, to test this idea, he wrapped his photographic plates in black paper so that sunlight couldn't reach them. Okay, so then he placed the crystals of uranium, that is potassium uranium sulfate, over these wrapped plates and put the whole setup outside in the sun. After some time, when he took the plates, he got the outline of crystals on it. And of course, he thought that his idea was correct and he planned to continue his experiment. But unfortunately, the weather in Paris was not at all good at that time. And so he put his uranium salts and the photographic plates away in a drawer. So after days, as usual, when he took the plate, he got really surprised because the image was amazingly clear than the first one, and the image he got is also given in the PPT. So at first he thought that the effect was due to the long-lasting fluorescence property, but soon he found that the element uranium was emitting some kind of radiation, which he called the Becquerel rays. Okay, so that's about the discovery, and the Curie couple further investigated on this phenomenon to find the signs of radioactivity. Okay, so they began to study this uranium rays, and they successfully extracted polonium and radium, two radioactive atoms from uranite. Okay, so pitchblende is the other name for uranium. Okay, so they also found that the strength of these radiations from a radioactive atom depends only on the quantity of the element. So it is not at all affected by any kind of chemical or physical changes, and that's why we call it as a spontaneous process. So that's all about the discovery. And for the contributions in physics, Henry Becquerel, Marie Curie, and Pierre Curie shared the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1903. And also, Marie Curie is the first female who won a Nobel Prize. Also, she's the first person who got two Nobel Prizes. She got the Nobel Prize in Physics as well as in chemistry. Okay. So now comes the topic units used in measurement of radioactivity. Generally, three units are used: Curie, Becquerel, and Rutherford. So Curie is the traditional unit of radioactivity. Okay, so it is the traditional unit of radioactivity, and 1 curie is equal to 3.7 into 10 raised to 10 disintegration per second. Then comes the SI unit of radioactivity, that is becquerel. Okay, so 1 becquerel is exactly equal to 1 disintegrations per second, which is equal to 2.703 into 10 raised to minus 11 curie. Okay, now comes the another unit of radioactivity, that is Rutherford. So 1 Rutherford is equal to 10 raised to 6 disintegrations per second. So that's all about my portions, and now I welcome my friend Gobika to continue this presentation.
Thank you very much, Josmi. I hope you all guys have learned about radioactivity, and I'm going to deal with the types of radioactive decay today. So, based on which particle is being emitted, radioactive decay can be classified into three, that is alpha decay, beta decay, and gamma decay. As the name suggests, there are alpha particles, beta particles, and gamma rays are being emitted. So let's get into what is alpha decay. Alpha decay is the emission of an alpha particle. An alpha particle is nothing but the helium nucleus having two protons and two neutrons. Alpha decay occurs when the nucleus ejects an alpha particle, yes, obviously. Then alpha decay occurs normally in heaviest elements, usually heavier than nickel, that is having mass number 28. And the lightest known alpha particle is tellurium. Look into this image, that is the nucleus is emitting an alpha particle. So, what actually is alpha decay? Alpha decay, let's say an unstable atom X having atomic number Z and atomic mass A undergoing alpha decay. That's it's emitting an alpha particle, becoming a more stable atom Y. Its atomic mass is reduced by 4 units and atomic number reduced by 2 units. Looking into an example of radium 22688 undergoing alpha decay emitting helium particle, that is an alpha particle, its mass number is reduced by 4 units and atomic number is reduced by 2 units, that is radon 22286. So the next classification being beta decay. What's actually a beta particle? Beta particle is a fast moving electron which is emitted from a nucleus of an atom that's undergoing radioactive decay. Beta decay changes the original nuclide into an isobar. That means there will not be any change to the mass number of the nuclide that's undergoing beta decay. So beta decay also can be classified into two types, that is beta plus decay and beta minus decay. Let's discuss what is beta plus and beta minus decay. So first is the beta minus decay. Uh, See an example, atom X having atomic mass A, atomic number Z undergoing beta minus decay. What happens actually in beta minus decay is that when the nucleus emits an electron and an antineutrino, that is the result of a process changing neutron into a proton. That is an antineutrino and electron is being created. Therefore, nucleus has one less neutron but an extra proton also. Therefore, the atomic number increases by 1 and there will not be any change the mass number, that because that changes the state. Okay, then what is look at that example of carbon 14 undergoing beta minus decay. It becomes the nitrogen of 714 emitting a beta particle. Its atomic mass remains the same, you can see, and atomic number is increased by 1 unit. So, next thing is the beta plus decay. Beta plus decay or positron emission. It is also called positron emission because a positron is being emitted. So, general equation of a positron emission is that a nuclide of X undergoing beta plus decay, the nucleus emit a positron and a neutrino. That is the result of a process that changes a proton to a neutron, but this process is also known as positron emission. See, its atomic mass remains the same, and against that beta minus decay, atomic number is decreased by 1 unit. That is also the positron decay result in nuclear transmutation. We say changing an atom of one chemical element into an atom of an element with an atomic number that is less than 1 unit. That is, it is entirely and another chemical molecule. So look at this example of carbon 11 undergoing beta plus decay. It becomes the boron particle, boron nucleus. That is, atomic mass remains same, atomic number is decreased by 1 unit. Okay, that's all about beta plus decay. Now let's see what is the third type, that is gamma decay. Gamma decay is that when atoms decay by alpha or beta particle, the nucleus of the new atom formed may still have too much energy to be completely stable. So they emit gamma rays. Remember, there will not be any change to the mass number or atomic number of the nuclei that undergoing gamma decay, but a photon, that is a gamma ray, only be emitted. As we all know, gamma rays of high power of penetration and high energy. My friend Shruti will be coming to the applications of gamma decay or something like that. Okay, when we tell about all these things, we have to mention one thing also, that's electron capture. Electron capture is a process that is exactly opposite to a beta decay. That is, here a proton-rich nucleus of an electrically neutral atom captures an inner atomic electron that is mainly from K or L shell, thereby changes nuclear proton to a neutron, simultaneously causes the emission of electron neutrino. Remember, an electron neutrino. See, let's see an example, that is of potassium 40 captures an electron of negative charge and becomes argon, that is atomic number is reduced by 1 unit, but there is no change to the atomic mass. So that's all about my topic, and I invite my friend Anjali to discuss the further topics. Thank you.
Thank you, Gobika. It was an excellent presentation. Hello, everyone. Today, I will be dealing with the topic Segre chart and radioactive radiations in electric and magnetic field. Segre chart is also known as the chart of nuclides, and this chart was named after Emilio Segre. He was an Italian American physicist and he discovered the element astatine and technetium, and he was also awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics for the discovery of antiproton in 1959. Segre chart is basically a graph plotted between the number of protons and the number of neutrons in a nucleus. And this graph plots around 2600 plus nuclides, of which 250 are stable. Each point plotted on this graph thus represent a nuclide of a known or a hypothetical chemical element. So one of the basic properties of the Segre chart is that this method of ordering the nuclides can offer a greater insight into the different isotopes of the same element. We are all familiar with the periodic table, but this periodic table will tell us only about the elements instead of their isotopes. So the Segre chart will maps the nuclear or radioactive behavior of nuclides. So hydrogen occurs at the bottom left and uranium occurs at the top right. So this NZ curve tells us about the stability of the nuclides. That means we can determine the stability of a nuclide by looking into the NZ curve. For elements having very small atomic number, that is atomic number less than 20, the NZ curve coincides with N is equal to Z line, which means that for smaller nuclides, the number of protons and the number of neutrons will fairly be the same. So in the first figure, we can see that the NZ curve coincides with N is equal to Z line. Moving on to the second picture, we can see that here the line of stability deviates from N is equal to Z line. For higher nuclides, the line of stability will deviate from N is equal to Z line. It is because as we progress, the number of neutrons increases than the number of protons. It is because of the fact that the Repulsive electromagnetic force between the protons acts over a longer range than the strong nuclear binding force, and as the nuclear diameter increases, the electromagnetic repulsion must be diluted by the presence of extra electrons. So extra electrons are added, and as a result here the line of stability deviates from n is equal to Z curve, and no stable nuclides exist above the proton number 83. For a nuclide to be stable, the repulsive electromagnetic force must balances the nuclear binding force. This figure gives us the complete picture of a Segre chart. All the nuclides that lies or that exist in nature will fall on this curve known as the NZ curve. And here the color is coded according to the predominant radioactive decay mode. And here the black color corresponds to the line of stability. Line of stability is nothing but the line of stable nuclides, and all the nuclides that are lying far apart from this line of stability will undergo various radioactive decay processes, and they tend to come closer to the line of stability. So the nuclides which are having very larger proton number will undergo alpha emission, and this alpha emission will result in a decrease of proton and neutron number, and they tend to come closer to the line of stability. And nuclides that lie below the line of stability will undergo beta plus emission, and the nuclides that lie above the line of stability will undergo beta minus emission. That is, unstable isotope will undergo radiations, that is, they are radioactive, whereas stable isotopes will not undergo any radiations, or their lifetime is too long. So now we can move on to our next topic, that is radioactive experiment. Here in this experiment, a radioactive substance such as uranium is placed inside a lead block. Since it is radioactive, it will emit radiations, and these radiations are allowed to pass through a focuser and is allowed to fall on a photographic plate. Now we can see what happens when these radiations are subjected to electric and magnetic field. Radioactive radiations in electric field. So one can observe that if these radiations are allowed to pass through a radioactive substance, three major rays, that is alpha, beta and gamma rays, will emit from these radioactive substance placed inside the lead block. So alpha rays, which are basically helium nucleus, are positively charged. So the rays that get deflected towards the negatively charged plate are called as alpha rays. Beta rays are electrons, so they are negatively charged, and the rays that get deflected towards the positively charged plate are called as beta rays. And electromagnetic radiations are nothing but gamma rays, so they are neutral and hence they move undeflected in an electric field. So here in this trajectory we can see that beta rays is deflected more than alpha rays. It is because alpha rays are 8,000 times heavier than beta rays, and hence alpha rays requires much more force to get deflected. Hence they are deflected less than beta rays. Now we can see what happens when these radiations are allowed to pass through a magnetic field. So alpha and beta rays, as we have already said, they are charged, so they get deflected in magnetic field as well. So alpha rays, they are positively charged. So the direction of the deflection of alpha rays can be determined by Fleming's left-hand rule. We know from electromagnetism that if we arrange our forefinger, middle finger and thumb in such a way that they are right angles to each other, and if the forefinger point towards the direction of magnetic field, middle finger shows the direction of current, then the thumb will gives us the direction of magnetic force. Here in this figure we can see that the magnetic field is represented by cross, which means magnetic field is perpendicular to the plane and is in the inward direction. So we should place our forefinger in such a way that it is towards inward of the screen, and the direction of the current flow of alpha particles is the flow of positive charge, so it will be the direction of current. So if we arrange our forefinger and middle finger in the direction of magnetic field and current, then our thumb will point upwards, which means that the moment of force or the moment of alpha particle will be in the upward direction. Similarly, in the case of beta particle, the magnetic field is in the same direction, but the flow of beta particles is the flow of negative charge, which is opposite to the direction of current. So if we place our fingers accordingly, our thumb will point downwards, which means that the moment of beta particles or the direction of magnetic force is in the downward direction. So beta particles will get deflected in the downward direction, and gamma rays they are neutral since they are electromagnetic radiations, and hence they are not deflected in electric field. This is all about my topic. Next, I would like to call upon Agila to continue the presentation. Thank you.
And hello, I'm going to deal with the source of radioactivity and Earth, radioactivity and Earth. At first, let's look at the source of radioactivity. The source of radioactivity is mainly divided into natural source of radiation and artificial source of radiation. People are constantly exposed to small amount of radiations from environment. As we carry out our normal activities, we are also exposed to some medical treatments and through activities involving radioactive materials. Now, let's look at what are different types of natural source of radiation. And it is listed here: radon, internal radiation, cosmic radiation, terrestrial sources, and other sources. First, let's look at radon. Radon is the largest source of natural radiation. Radon is the naturally occurring radioactive gas. It has no smell, color, or taste. It is produced from the radioactive decay of uranium, which is found in all rocks and soil. Radon can easily escape from the ground into the air, where it decays and produces further radioactive particles. As we birth, these particles are deposited on the cell, where they can damage DNA and potentially cause cancer. Next one, internal radiation. All people have internal radiation, mainly from radioactive potassium, carbon 14, and other isotopes inside our body from birth, and therefore are the source of exposure to others. The variation in dose from one person to another is not as great as that associated with the cosmic and terrestrial sources. Next is terrestrial source. The composition of the Earth is the main source of terrestrial radiation. Radioactive material can be found throughout the nature in soil, water, and vegetation. Important radioactive element includes uranium and thorium and their radioactive decay products, which have been present since the Earth was formed. Because these elements have long half-life, the amount of terrestrial radiation varies in different parts of the world due to the difference in concentration of uranium and thorium in soil. And next one is cosmic radiation. The sun and stars send a constant stream of cosmic radiations to Earth. It consists of fast-moving particles, cosmic rays, and mostly protons, but it can be other particles or wave energy. The amount of cosmic radiation that we receive can be changed due to the elevation, atmospheric conditions, and Earth magnetic field. And some other sources are food condense and drinking waters. One of the example is shown in the slide. Brazil nut, which contains radium 226. Now let's look at artificial source of radiation. Medical source, nuclear power plant, consumer product, industrial source are the different source of artificial radiation. Medical source. Radiation used in medicine is the largest source of man-made radiation. Most of our exposure is from the diagnostic X-rays. Linear accelerator, which is also known as LINAC, is a device used for the external beam radiation treatment for the patients with cancer. And radiopharmaceutical is the radioactive compound used for the treatment of human diseases. Next one is nuclear power plant. It is the most important as well as harmful man-made source of radiation due to the presence of radioactive uranium and thorium in the fly ash from coal burning power plant give off more radiations to the environment. Consumer product. A variety of consumer products contain radioactive materials. In some, the radioactive material is a working part of the product. The annual total radiation exposure from cosmetic product is about the hundredth of the exposure from natural source. And the last one is industrial source. This radiation has a wide range of uses in industries. It is used in the smoke detectors and some glow-in-dark exit signs. And my next topic is radioactivity and earth. Uranium, thorium, potassium are the main radioactive elements seen in the earth crust. Their isotopes uranium-228, thorium-232, and potassium-40 decays with half-life is so long that the significant amount remains in the earth. The slow decay of these isotopes provides the basis for the radiometric age dating and isotopic modeling. Phenomena such as volcanoes, earthquakes, which is derived from the natural radioactivity. The higher level of radioactive element during the early history of Earth resulted in higher heat flows. And the radioactivity can cause many environmental concerns. The most significant risk is posed by the accumulation of radon, the gaseous product of uranium. And it's all about my topic. And now I invite Rudy to continue with the presentation.
Thank you, Akhila. It was a wonderful presentation. So, now I am going to deal with two topics, that is properties of radioactivity and applications of radioactivity. We have seen what is radioactivity, what are the types, source, etc. So, now we can go to the first topic, that is properties of radioactivity. And the first property is half life, and it is very simple and it is familiar to us. And half life is denoted by T half. So, it is defined as the interval of time required for one half of the atomic nuclei of a radioactive sample to decay. So, let's look into a simple example to understand what is half life. We all know cobalt 60 is a radioactive element and it has a wide application in radiotherapy. It has a half life of 5.26 years. So, a normal sample of this cobalt 60 contains 8 gram. But after 5.26 years, that is after half life, that 8 gram is reduced to 4 grams. That is the half of 8. Okay, so that is half life. Then the next property is decay constant. So, decay constant is the probability of decay per unit time and its unit is second raised to minus 1. So, there is a relation between decay constant and half life. That is, T half is equal to 0.693 by lambda or T half is equal to log 2 by lambda. So, the third property is activity and it is denoted by the letter A. Activity is defined as the number of disintegrations per second. So, its historical unit is Curie, but it has the SI unit becquerel, and it is also measured in disintegrations per minute, that is DPM. So, next we can deal with two units of activity, that is Curie and Becquerel. First one is Curie. So it is the historical unit of activity. We know that. So 1 Curie is equal to 2.22 into 10 to the power 12 dpm. dpm means disintegrations per minute. Then 1 Curie is also equal to 3.7 into 10 to the power 10 dps, that is disintegrations per second. Then the next is Becquerel. So Becquerel is the SI unit of activity. We already discussed it. Then 1 Becquerel is equal to 1 dps and 1 Curie is equal to 3.7 into 10 to the power 10 Becquerel. So that's all about the properties of radioactivity. Next, we can move on to the topic applications of radioactivity. We know that there is a wide applications and we listed very few of them. That is in medical field, in food sterilization, in agriculture, in radiocarbon dating, in energy production, and in manufacture of weapons. So we can discuss it one by one. First is in medical field. So the radioactive isotopes are used as traces. So what are traces? Traces are elements whose pathway through which a chemical reaction can be followed. So one example is iodine 131. It is used to monitor the function of thyroid gland. So how it is possible? So iodine is injected into our body in the form of sodium iodide. So, thyroid gland has an ability to extract iodine from blood and it is used to produce thyroid hormones. So, iodine is accumulated in the thyroid gland. So, by monitoring the radioactivity of that iodine, we can monitor the function of thyroid gland. Next, in the treatment of cancer. So, we know that cancerous cells are very sensitive to gamma radiations because cancerous cells divide very rapidly. So, they are immature than the normal cells. So, gamma rays can easily affect it. So, gamma rays is used to damage the cancer cells, but it is harmful to our normal cells also. Then, in the sterilization of medical equipments, so the medical equipments are also sterilized by allowing concentrated beams of radiations having high energy and it kills the microorganisms, thereby sterilizing medical equipments. Then infrared gun or temperature gun. Infrared gun or temperature gun is used to measure the body temperature quickly. Then the next field is food sterilization. So, like medical equipments, food can also be sterilized by allowing concentrated beams of radiations into it. So, we have a doubt that when we allow the concentrated beams of radiations, there is a chance for food become poison. No, it's a chemical free and heat free approach. Next is in agriculture. Disease resistant crops have been developed with the help of these radioactive isotopes, and it also shows how plants absorb fertilizers. So it is very helpful to farmers to know how much fertilizer should the plant need to get maximum yield, like that. Okay, then radiocarbon dating. Archaeologists use carbon 14 to date artifacts containing plants or animals materials. Then criminal investigators use radiation to examine evidence. Then museums rely on radioactive materials to verify the authenticity of art objects and paintings. Next is energy production. We all know nuclear reactors. So controlled nuclear fission takes place in every nuclear reactors and it is used for energy production. Next application is, and the final one is nuclear weapon. So while we hearing the word nuclear weapon, the first thing that come to our mind is what? Atom bomb. Yes, it's a nuclear bomb and it is also called nuclear warhead, nuke, etc. So it is very highly explosive and this nuclear weapon can be made by fission or by the combination of both fission and fusion. If it is made by fission only, then it is called fission bomb. Or if it is made by the combination of fission and fusion, then it is called thermonuclear bomb. So we discussed what are the properties of radioactivity and what are the applications of radioactivity. So that's all our presentation. Hope all the topics are clear to you. And we are so thankful to each and everyone for your kind attention and cooperation. And we are so thankful to our Professor Dr. Pius Agustin to giving us such a wonderful platform. So explore the endless world. It's yours. Thank you.